I'm Heather Arndt-Anderson, and I'm an author and writer about food, plants, and history. I've written a few books, and I write garden stuff for Sunset Magazine. My background's in science. I have a Bachelor of Science in Biology with a botany focus, and I worked as a field botanist for 10 years before I had a kid and couldn't travel for work as much. I had a food blog going while I was working as a biologist. It was just like a hobby. I'd come home after work, or sometimes in the field, I'd be in some like little podunk town like Odell, California, and I would write about like the liver and onions I ate at the weird truck stop and put that in the blog, or some taco pizza out in, Walla Walla, Washington. Yeah, so I just kind of kept up the food writing after my son was born. I started writing about culinary history sort of on a lark. I had been doing a couple of paid gigs as a writer about food. When I was still pregnant, I wrote an encyclopedia article for the four-volume Food Cultures of the World encyclopedia, and I had been tasked with writing the Pacific Northwest chapter. So after that project wrapped, I think I turned that assignment in like the day before I gave birth or something, like very close to the wire. A few months later, maybe it was more like a year or two later, when Zephyr was still an infant, the editor of that encyclopedia put out the APB that they were looking for authors to write books for a new series called the Meals series. And so I pitched Breakfast. And because I was a new writer, new author, they had me submit a sample chapter and a proposal and the whole 9 yards, and it was accepted. So I decided, I guess I better learn how to be a culinary historian. And luckily, having a background in science with some natural history gave me some of the tools I needed to get started at that. But I definitely approached it more as a writer and less as an academic or a researcher. One of the things that I think is really cool about breakfast is besides the fact that breakfast is the one meal that people will eat all day. Like, there's no all day dinner, but there's definitely all day breakfast at lots of restaurants in the West. But a lot of countries' national dishes are breakfast dishes. And so I think that the foods that we eat in the morning have come to really represent us as humans, depending on where you live. That could be like the actual, like your culinary vernacular is based around your morning meal. Four generations of, yeah, my family's been in the state for 100 and something years. A little while. Climate is just one part of it's just one of the challenges of growing food here. I think that more recently, over the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years, um, one of the bigger challenges is the a large amount of infill construction that's happening. And so small single family houses are being torn down and big apartments are being put up. And so that means that, for example, one of my neighbors who's lived in this neighborhood for decades, she is now having challenges growing food in her backyard because there's a giant high rise next door to her taking up all the light. And so a lot of the solar energy that's being infiltrated and just captured, it's being blocked, and it's a consideration that I don't think a lot of developers are making as one of the impacts to people's ability to stay in their own neighborhoods. I have noticed, this year in particular has been a really weird year for everybody. The growing season's been really mild, and nobody got much in the way of like peppers, tomatoes, or cucumbers. Just has been a very like kind of cool and mild summer, and my own garden hasn't done very much at all this year. There's a lot to unpack. Um, I think that hashtag Cinco de Mayo is sort of the most like perfect kernel of like how to represent the way that most white Americans interact with the Latinx community. Word Hispanics can be seen as problematic depending on who you ask. Taco bowls sound like some white people shit. I think the thing that I find most problematic about his tweet is the fact that he's promoting his own business as the president. That's the part that's most troubling to me. The rest of it is kind of, I don't know, just par for the course, I guess. I don't think that it's as offensive as somebody who has been elected using their platform to promote their private interests. He's doing as much damage as he possibly can, as quickly as he can. And his days are definitely numbered, even if he somehow squeaks in another 4 years. I'm an optimist, I guess, so I think that we'll survive for another 4 years, like as a species. But yeah, it's really worrying, and the biggest effects that will come to reverse climate change will come from policy, and he's not going to be part of that process. More optimistically, I think that, well, for example, my son is in a school-wide walkout today for climate change. So I have a lot of hope and optimism about the mantle being taken up by the kids these days. I think the youths are going to make a big difference. And yeah, we just have to kind of hold on to all the little threads that are keeping the bridge in place until they can come and take over. I feel like that's all we can do right now. Yeah, absolutely. I think that I mean, as a parent, like one of my favorite ways to kind of introduce conversational topics or like bring things up is through books. And like bibliotherapy is like a really big thing in our family. So yeah, I would definitely be into that.